Hello and thank you for watching. This is Jennifer Bowman with Olympia Piano, and in this short video I'm going to go over basic dotted notes, which can sometimes be confusing. We will cover dotted half notes and dotted quarter notes in this video. The first thing I want to clarify is that there are two types of dots on notes in music. The first type is an articulation mark, which tells you how to play a note, smooth, short, extra emphasis, that sort of thing. So when you see a dot that is an articulation marking, it's placed directly above or below the note. And it represents the articulation of staccato, which means to play the note very short. This is not the kind of dot we're going to be talking about in this video. The kind of dot we will cover in this video is placed on the side of the note, and it extends the duration or length of the note by half of the main note. In other words, it makes the note 1.5 times its normal length. So what I'm going to do now is explain dotted notes, dotted half notes and dotted quarter notes using 4/4 time. A 4/4 time signature means that there are 4 beats in a measure and a quarter note gets 1 beat. So I'd like to share with you a way that I break down the different note lengths with my students. So I've drawn a little circle to represent a 4/4 measure. Usually with my students, I call the circle a pizza. So this circle or pizza equals a whole measure or 4 beats. So if we haven't sliced the pizza up, it's a whole pizza, which would represent then a whole note or 4 beats. So if we cut that pizza into half, we get 2 halves of pizza, which represent 2 half notes, 2 beats each. And then if we split those in half again, we get 4 pieces of pizza, which represent 4 quarter notes. So each of those 4 slices would represent a beat. So when I count these types of notes, I use a couple of different ways to do the counting. You can count with numbers, so I'm going to clap and count. So for a whole note, if you are clapping and counting it, you would clap once, 1, 2, 3, 4, or sometimes it's easier to use words. You can do ta, ah, ah, ah. Similarly, for half notes, you would have 2 per note, clapping and counting, 1, 2, 3, 4, or ta, ta. And then finally for quarter notes, we would clap with numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, or ta, 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 ta. So again, when you see a dot on the side of the note, it means to play the note for 1.5 times its value, or add half to it. I'm going to show it to you kind of like a math equation. So a dotted half note equals half note plus half of a half note. So now let's do another line, just like we would in a math equation. Dotted half note equals half note plus a quarter note, because quarter note is half of a half note. And then finally, let's put some numbers underneath that. Dotted half note equals 2 beats for the half note plus 1 beat for the quarter note. So dotted half note equals 2 plus 1, which is 3. So we would count this using clapping 1, 2, 3, or ta, ah, ah. So when we move to the dotted quarter note, it's a little bit more complicated. So I'd like to go back to the pizza circle. What we need to do is we need to cut those quarter notes in half, because the formula for a dotted note is a note plus half of it. So let's cut all those quarter notes in half, and now we have 8 slices. So that also gives us a different type of a note, which is called an eighth note. I'd like you to pay special attention to what eighth notes look like. They can be grouped together in all sorts of ways. So sometimes you see them groups of 2, which is very common, sometimes groups of 3, 4, or even 6. When the eighth notes are grouped together, you want to take note of how many lines are in the beam, that line, joining the notes together on the top. Eighth notes only have 1 line joining them together. If there are 2 lines or 3 lines, that means they're a different type of note. So I'm not going to go into that in this video. Just know that eighth notes have 1 line on top. Similarly, if it's a single eighth note, not in a group, it kind of resembles a quarter note. The note is filled in, but it also has a little flag on the top or the bottom. Again, pay attention to how many lines are in that flag, that curved part on the bottom or top. Eighth notes only have 1 line for their flag. Okay, back to the dotted quarter note and the counting. So if we go back to our pizza diagram, I want to go over the common method of counting when a piece has eighth notes. Remember that the pizza represented one measure of 4 times. So that means you count to 4. So just because we cut those pieces in half doesn't mean all of a sudden we start counting to 8. We're still counting to 4. So what we have to do is find something to say during those other notes. So sometimes when you just have groups of 2 or 4 eighth notes, you might use the words tiki, but I'm not going to do that in this instance. I'm going to use the other method, which is inserting the word and in between the numbers that represent the beats. And usually in music, we use the plus sign to mean the word and. So when I fill those ands in, pizza looks like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, going around clockwise. So I tell my students, if we have a piece in 4/4 that uses eighth notes, we're going to be saying 8 things per measure. And so our job is to know how many things to say for each type of note. So for a whole note, you'd say 8 things: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Dotted half note, you would say 6 things: 1 and 2 and 3 and. Half note would be 4 things: 1 and 2 and. Quarter note would get 2 things: 1 and an eighth note would get 1 thing, either 1 or and. So let's go over the dotted quarter note in a similar fashion to how we did the dotted half note, kind of like a math equation. So dotted quarter note equals quarter note plus half a quarter note. So let's do the next line. We have a quarter note plus an eighth note, which is half of a quarter note. And the next line, if we split that quarter note in half, we'd have 2 eighth notes. So there's 3 eighth notes. So the dotted quarter note lasts for 3 eighth notes. So the way we would count that would be 1 and 2. So you will say 3 things for a dotted quarter. So I'm going to just close this out by giving you a couple of examples. Dotted quarter followed by an eighth note, you would count 1 and 2 for the dotted quarter, and then the eighth note would get 1 thing, and if we reverse that, we have the eighth note first, 1 for the eighth note, then and 2 and for the dotted quarter note. And that's it. So the dot adds half to the note. Dotted half note gets 3 beats, and dotted quarter note gets 1.5 beats. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope it gave you some more understanding about dotted notes and how to figure out the rhythm. Please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this, or other videos on technique, or short snippets on how to play certain parts of the repertoire. If you write to me in the comments, please let me know where you're from. I love hearing from people all over the world. And as always, thank you for watching.